Welcome to At Issue. My name is H. Wayne Wilson, and this is a program about education. At the start of our 29th season of At Issue, we thank you for joining us once again for a new season. But we're a little bit different this year. We're not going to have seasons anymore. At Issue is moving to a full year format, and we thank the management at WTVP for allowing that to happen. But right now, on the table, education issues for the next hour in this special edition of At Issue. Let me tell you right now that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and these are 2014 statistics, the unemployment rate for U.S. workers with a bachelor's degree was 3.5%, high school grads 6%, dropouts 9% unemployment rate. The weekly earnings for those with a bachelor's degree, $1,101. For those with high school degrees, $668 on a weekly basis. If you dropped out of high school, $488. So you see the importance of graduating from high school and then considering other options afterward. And to have a discussion about how we can best train and educate our students in the state of Illinois are the executive directors of two major organizations that have been focusing on these issues for years and years. Dr. Brent Clark is here. Dr. Clark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
He is the executive director of the Illinois Association of School Administrators, and you have a PhD from Southern Illinois University in?
Carbondale.
And that is in what arena?
Educational administration.
Educational administration. Welcome to the land of Salukis.
Thank you.
I am a Saluki as well. Joining us is Roger Eddy. Roger is the executive director of the Illinois Association of School Boards. And he is uniquely prepared to have a conversation with us, at least in part because you were a state legislator.
I was.
And prior to that, you were a superintendent.
School superintendent and a high school principal.
At?
Hudsonville, Illinois, down in southeastern Illinois, a small rural community right on the Wabash River near, Vincennes and Terre Haute.
And did it have financial problems when you were there?
We did okay. We did all right.
Did you?
We had a really, really good board and working relationship with our teachers, so we did fine.
The reason I bring up the financial is because that's where I want to start with this.
Sure.
Let's start with, first of all, Article 10, Section 1 of the 1970 Illinois Constitution reads, in part, the state has the primary responsibility for financing the system of public education. I ask both of you, in your interpretation, what does that mean?
Well, in an ideal setting, that would be the majority, or 51%. In application, the way that wealth is distributed across our state on a per student basis, for some districts that means more than 51%, and in other districts it means considerably less, maybe 10, 8, 9% comes from the state. So really, our state aid formula is a means-tested way of distributing state dollars to our schools.
The Supreme Court has said primary responsibility doesn't mean 51%, right?
That was the interpretation, and anytime you use words that are somewhat vague, primary, significant, they're open to someone's interpretation. And I sometimes in these situations, I try to define something by what I don't think it means. And I don't think it means that the state only contributes about 25 or 26% of the total amount of resources necessary. And that's where we're at today. It used to be over 30%. And even back when it was over 30%, I don't think someone would really define that as a primary role. Now, there are districts, as Dr. Clark mentioned, where the state is providing very little toward the operating expenses of the school district, and some where it is a large majority. But in the aggregate, I think it means that the state is responsible for making sure that districts have operating revenue that if they can't produce it locally, it is provided in a manner that's going to make sure the children have an adequate education.
That's the goal of the current state school aid formula, which has been in place since the 1990s sometime.
Well, the last time our current formula was adjusted was FY 97. But that formula has actually been in place a good 15, 18 years before that. It was just adjusted in FY 97. And it's a formula that is not modern, it's not scalable, and it's time that that formula be shelved and a replacement brought forward that is more modern in its stature, that's adjustable, scalable over time as our population, our demographics change and modify in Illinois.
Let's talk about what some of those changes might be, but before we do that, I want to bring up the foundation level and how that relates to the funding of schools. Right now, the foundation level is $6,119. Where'd that number come from, and is it part of this?
Well, it comes from a calculation that is made when you take the amount of money that you're willing to put in an appropriation line item for general state aid and multiply that or divide it by the number of students you think you're going to have to support. That's where the number comes from. It doesn't come from anything that is substantially supporting that this number educates a child. It means that you have this much money, and if you divide the number of students that are going to be affected by that, you end up with $6,119. And that's really it. It has no other significance. The Education Funding Advisory Board makes a recommendation on what the foundation level should be. And the last time they met, they were north of $8,500 as a recommendation for the foundation level. The foundation level is $6,119 because that's how much money there was put in that line item to support a level.
It's nothing more than it's a budget number, not an educational number. And as I've said on a number of occasions, the only relevance of 6119 is that it's the number that sits between 6118 and 6120. None of those numbers have relevance to what the educational needs are of children. It was a budget solution at the moment it was crafted.
I want to add one other thing about it. For the last 5 years, prior to this year, this fiscal year, not only was the number 6119 not accurate, but it was also prorated. School districts did not receive the full 6119.
Right.
They were in the 88 or 89% one year, and so they kept the foundation level. And we ended up with a term called the effective foundation level, and that was the prorated foundation level. So we were flying terms around that really even kind of modified the foundation level. The real number that the Education Funding Advisory Board under the current formula recommended was over $8,500. Just simply couldn't be funded, so we changed it in the implementation bill to reflect what money was available.
You've mentioned EFAB, the Educational Foundation Advisory Board. Can you explain what that is so that our audience understands, and what power do they have, being that they're an advisory board?
Well, it was a task force that was put together. I believe it consisted of 5 people, primarily appointed by the governor's office over the years. It's rotated through very, very good people have served on that. But their role was to try to advise the budgeteers, the revenue committees in the Senate and the House as to how many dollars were necessary at that moment in time to provide a sufficient or an adequate education to children across Illinois. They've done their job, but the key there was advisory. No real statutory power. They could advise on a number, but that number has been largely, if not completely, ignored since the inception of EFAB. It's just not. It's the work has been good, but the actual results, in terms of the legislature carrying that out, have not been ever followed. And
that's a simple case of the legislature, regardless of what EFAB says, the legislature says we have X dollars total. We have 2,063,000 students in the state of Illinois. Math says this is what you're getting.
Yeah, and we know which districts operate under the foundation level, the general state aid formula. We know which ones operate under the flat grant, and we can calculate a number that will have the revenue for that particular number and put in an appropriation line item. And that all goes back to the total amount of revenue that the state has, operating revenue, and what part of that should go to education as compared to social services, and the bigger picture. Certainly, we would like to see a large amount of that go to educating children in the state, but we also understand that there are other needs in the state. So it may come down to whatever formula, and we certainly feel that any formula should be based on best practice and evidence of providing quality education, and that's where the evidence-based model comes in. But you're going to have to fund it. we have to fund those formulas for them to work.
Well, the demographics of our state has shifted noticeably in the last 10, 20 years, and our current funding formula, the general state aid formula, just hasn't adequately compensated or taken into account, if you will, the demographic change as has occurred in Illinois. We're now a majority minority state. We have districts that have high concentrations of both poverty and EL learners, and to have a sufficient amount of funds available at the local level to educate children, it's going to take a different approach that's accommodating, it's modern, it's flexible, it can be adjusted as things continue to change over time, and that we're not stuck into a locked-in 20-some-year-old, maybe 30-some-year-old formula.
So let's extend that conversation to efforts in the state legislature to modify the state school aid formula. We're going to get to property taxes in a minute, things of that nature, but there were efforts to modify it to help those districts that were far below. You mentioned, Doctor, at the start, there are some schools getting 10, 12%. So those have failed by and large. There's a new approach in the legislature now in terms of trying to modify how you might get additional dollars for some districts.
Right, and you know, a couple of years ago, Senator Andy Manar really began the work on convincing everyone that the formula that we had needed to be replaced, and he did a tremendous amount of work on a formula that had taken into account each school's demographics and how many poor students based on the poverty level were in a district, how many EL students were in a district, and then they were given weights and weightings to come up with a total student weighting for that district to take times the foundation level, and he also had a distribution model. So he did a tremendous amount of work over a couple of years, and along the way, as part of a broader education project that we were undertaking with our associations called Vision 2020, we believed that an evidence-based funding model would be the best approach, and we have worked hard to get that front and center now so that it can be considered. And I think there's similarities with those two approaches, Senator Marar's approach and our approach, in that we're both trying to establish for every school district, based on the unique demographics and student populations in those districts, an adequacy level per pupil that it would take to provide a quality education. And I think that this summer there's been a lot of work toward coalescence around the evidence-based model, because it does align well with what Senator Manar started to do.
Yeah, I mean, Senator Manar kicked the door down, as I've said before, but the approach that you've seen this summer is that his approach, the evidence-based funding model approach, really beginning to merge and come together around a singular focus on first adequacy per child. What does it take based on their demographic and their specific needs that they bring to the table? So first adequacy, then once that's established, how do you distribute any new state money so that it gets to those districts that are the furthest away, the lowest spending per child? How do you get those dollars to those districts the quickest to move them so they can show gains with those children the fastest?
And I want to add very quickly, if I could, Senator Jason Barickman has also worked really, really hard on school funding the last couple of years, and with us very closely on our evidence-based model. And this is taking on a kind of a bipartisan approach that we like to see. Senator Barickman has really been out in front supporting on the evidence-based model. So I think that's an important component of this as well.
In fact, he initially introduced the concept back in, I'm going to get my years, probably February of 15.
Right.
Would have been when he initially introduced the concept at a press conference in both Bloomington and Springfield, and more or less kicked it off. Now, as you know, it takes time to get legislation vetted, seeded, planted, watered, and up and growing. But now, you use the word bipartisan. We have Democratic senators, we have Republican senators, we have Democratic House members, we have Republican House members, all circling the evidence-based funding model, leaning in and learning more and being interested in more or less nodding the head, saying this is probably the way we're going to go when we go.
We're talking about timetable, so are we looking at the spring session for something?
Yeah, I think, the governor also weighed in, and a funding commission was established, and it's bipartisan, bicameral, and I've attended several of those meetings, and there's participation by all 4 caucuses. I think that is significant, and the folks that are there are paying attention, and they're asking really good questions. I thought the first 2 meetings of the commission really set the tone, and the agendas were set. The Secretary of Education, Beth Purvis, has a good agenda. She listens, and she brings in individuals with expertise to provide the members with the background that they're going to need to make a recommendation eventually. So that's going to take time. Those meetings are scheduled through the fall, and I think the hope is that in the spring session there will be a coalescence around legislation that can get that bipartisan support.
Target date for the commission to conclude is February 1st. We know that's close to the governor's budget address that's typically given in the middle of February. So we anticipate all the work that's been done over the last 3 years. And by the way, drafting a school funding overhaul bill is not for the faint of heart. It's a 400-plus page bill because of all the pieces you touch in the state statutes to do that. So there's been a really 2 good attempts at doing that. So taking that work, we're way advanced as we come into the spring session to take that work, merge it even further, refine it even more, have a nice bill that we hope will be clearly bipartisan. At the end of the day, the governor needs to put his signature on it, so it's important the governor's office is supportive. And you've seen the secretary bring in national experts and just more or less bring that focus right in on Illinois. So it's a really good process.
And Senator Lightford, who has led on a lot of education reform issues over the last 4 or 5 years, is involved as well, and has a working group that meets regularly, get into weeds with a lot of the folks who are key stakeholders across the state, and she's really interested in this as well, and we're encouraged by that because Senator Lightford really has kind of had this formula to put these folks together and get a compromise on key issues.
Her unique strength is taking the diversity of the state and the groups and getting the details fleshed out, which is it takes time because there's so many competing little peccadillos.
There's a lot of energy, a lot of effort. Yeah. So I think that's why maybe now more than ever there's this feeling that this can get done, and the spring session seems to be when it could happen.
And so the audience understands the key to this is that no school district will be financially harmed by this, and that's where we've had problems in the past. And as a former state legislator, you know that better than anybody.
Well, I think we've evolved to the point of understanding that it would be very difficult to pass legislation that just simply, would take money from one district so that another district would benefit. We want adequacy. We love the idea that equity would come along with it, but we don't want everyone to be equitably inadequate. That just doesn't make sense in a funding formula. And I think we've gotten past that to understand that for this to work politically, that we're going to have something that holds everyone a little bit harmless from large losses. Now, the evidence-based model creates a per pupil funding amount, and we would be able to scale toward that and make sure that the revenue that was available would go to those districts that need it the most. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Well, they have a problem when they see their district losing large sums of money. And so that with that out of the way, I think, again, we get a little bit more energy, and we get those folks who maybe used to oppose this on the side of understanding it and supporting it.
One of the neat facets of this is if the evidence-based funding model is implemented and if it's funded over multiple years, you would be able to come in and show through data, you could chart it, you could graph it, you could demonstrate it, however you wanted to do it. You could show the financial progress that districts were making toward their adequacy target. So you would be moving districts forward, and you'd be able to literally count them and show the progress they're making. And so to a legislator that's voting then on a subsequent budget and a subsequent investment in education, they're going to come in and say, look, last year we were able to move, let's say, 125 districts from the lowest funded tier up to the next tier. And we moved 55 districts out of the second tier to the third tier. So we're advancing districts forward. We're actually being able to track the progress from the investment we're making. And that's something we have never been able to do. And we think that's important for subsequent years of investment into the formula.
Metrics.
That's been missing.
Metrics count.
They do.
They do.
I want to talk about evidence-based model. I want to talk about testing, things of that nature. But one more question on finance, and that involves the local aspect of funding. The property tax is the primary source of funding. And personally, I pay 56% of my property taxes to District 150, or Peoria Public Schools as they're known now. And they are asking, in addition to that, for an increase in the state sales tax, a share of increase for all county schools, all public schools in Peoria County. So what is there going to continue to be this pressure on the local property tax, or might there be some relief in the future, or is that too far to?
One of the recommendations out of Vision 2020 is the statewide expansion of the 1% sales tax, similar to what Iowa has done. We have in Illinois probably somewhere in the order of 15 to 18 counties that have the 1% sales tax. I think we called it a front door referendum earlier. It is a vote of the people to say, hey, we're going to put a little bit more in. It's going to stay right here locally. It's going to go to the repair, maintenance, and upgrades of our facilities. So we're going to take matters into our own hands, and we're going to put our dollars into our own projects, our own facilities. In those counties where we have that in Illinois, when you drive into those counties, that it's had it in place for a few years, where they've been able to collect dollars, invest it in their facilities, you see well-maintained, good-looking school facilities throughout the county. So it does work. Iowa's had it for a number of years in all their counties. It's something that Illinois should look at over the long span.
And for clarification, that tax is for capital improvements only. It is not for education.
Correct.
You helped write that bill?
Yeah, I was one of the chief co-sponsors of the bill, and basically the idea was to provide folks an option locally to relieve the burden on property taxes, to have a release valve here. The way school funding works, if you're able to use that funding for capital, maybe you can then adjust your levy and not have as much of the property tax burden affected. And schools are different all over the state. I mean, the needs are different all over the state. But we thought it was important that they be provided that option. It's completely front door. Some places it's passed, some places it's failed. And in those places where it's failed, maybe property taxes were increased because they had to do some kind of capital program that had to be funded, and you have no other funding source.
So you take a county that's implemented this, okay, and let's just say it's got 6 school districts in the county, and some of those districts, they'll all be in a different place facility-wise in terms of construction and so forth. I know of instances where it's been implemented in the county. District A has said, hey, I need to build a new elementary school, or I need to remodel an elementary school. District B has said, listen, we just went through a 10-year upgrade and rebuild of our whole district. We need nothing. Here's what we're going to do. For every dollar we take in, we're going to offset that against our property taxes. So for every dollar they bring in on the sales tax revenue, they simply reduce their levy by that same amount of money. That helps the property taxes go down. So that is occurring today in Illinois, and it can work. It does work. We see it working, and we should look at it long term.
But there's no obligation to reduce the property tax.
No, there isn't, except for the fact that the local community would hold the feet to the fire of those who have made a promise, and hopefully that means something. I think it does, and conditions change. You might find out over a period of time that your levy would be affected, or maybe your EAV goes up, and maybe there are other issues. But it is a tool. It's like having another arrow to use if you need to, and it's flexibility that can be used in situations where it is wise and prudent to reduce the reliance on property taxes.
Definitely takes the pressure off of them.
Let's turn to what's called Vision 2020. Your two organizations and others, and by the way, Mike Jacoby was supposed to be with us. He's with the Association of School Business Officials. Mike, we hope you're feeling just fine after your bout with back pain. He was seeing his doctor rather than being here and taping this program. But the three organizations and others, the Principals Association, et cetera, are supportive of Vision 2020. Is there a simple way to explain to the audience what that is?
It is. There were 6 organizations, the ones you've mentioned, plus the regional superintendents of schools and the Superintendent's Commission for the Study of Demographics and Diversity. Those 6 came together and said, you know, the legislative environment is such that we need to clearly articulate the things that we're for. We're really good at knowing what we're against. What are we for? And so with that thinking in mind, we put together a task force of around 85 to 90 people, all representing those 6 organizations and other organizations technically from every corner of Illinois, every size of school district, every size of community involved, and spent over a year working in kind of a subcommittee style work, but very targeted. Every subcommittee had a facilitator, and the idea was to craft. This sounds really like a policy wonk, but to craft a policy brief that would serve as a long-term guide on policy recommendations, which effectively become bills in the legislature that would in either improve or enhance the opportunities and experiences for school children. So long story short, determining what we're for, putting that into bill form, trying to pass those through the legislature, that's the crux of what Vision 2020 really is.
Can you, that's big picture. Can you give me some examples so
Sure.
that we can put our hands on it?
Sure. The work was kind of separated into what we call 4 pillars. Mm-hmm. One pillar has to do with what we believe to be an important part of public policy, and that's producing and retaining highly effective educators. And that pillar is called Highly Effective Educators. The second one has to do with the fact that we support 21st century learning. That's a pillar. A third pillar is the need for a balanced accountability model in our state, so that when we hold schools accountable, we hold them accountable for more than just how they do on a test score, but multiple measures. And the last one has the 4th pillar in the Vision 2020 plan is equitable and adequate funding. So last year, in the first year, we passed some legislation that was targeted for highly effective educators, and it had to do with reciprocity between Illinois and states around us, and we broke some of the walls down that were costing us opportunities to have really high quality teachers come in from other states because our reciprocity system really was too difficult for those folks to come in. There's one example of a successful
They could come in for a
legislation.
semester and teach?
So they could come in, they actually could come in and get a certificate and teach in Illinois after
okay.
the reciprocity bill passed. And there were instances those same teachers would not have been able to. So that's an example of a success. Another one is we passed in Pillar 3, the Balanced Accountability Pillar, a model, a statute that would create a new model for accountability in the state of Illinois. Now that's been affected by the federal law, ESSA, that passed, but those are 2 examples where we have made some real progress because the education community came together, and as Dr. Clark mentioned, decided that based on our collective knowledge of what's good for education systems, here's what we should be for. And then we communicated it to legislators. We held the first ever Alliance Legislative Summit. That first year, we brought board members and superintendents and business officials and principals in teams to Springfield. We talked to them about the policies that we should support. We sent them over to the Capitol, and they became advocates for those policies. And I thought we had a really good, successful first year. The funding formula that we really believe is the best formula for Illinois has also come out of that work. And in year 2, that's kind of dominated a lot of our time and resources in the Vision 2020 work, trying to get this new funding formula passed.
It's not just the 6 organizations that you referenced, but it's also school districts that have signed on board?
There by board resolution, different school districts have had the opportunity to pass a board resolution saying, hey, we support Vision 2020. And we've seen probably over 550 of those resolutions come through. And as the clarity around the funding model, it continues to move forward and continues to evolve, where there's a greater understanding of the exact effect, I think you'll see even more school districts step forward and say, you know what, we're signing on because this makes sense.
And there are approximately just over 860 school districts in the state of Illinois, and that brings us to another topic of, is that too many? As an example, there are quite a few feeder schools going into Limestone High School. There are 3 going into Washington High School, public schools. There's also a Catholic school that feeds into Washington. So one of the complaints was by the then superintendent of Limestone High School, for example, was that he wasn't so much worried about savings because of saving a superintendent's salary or something of that nature. He was saying there were 8 different sets of curricula, and I spent the freshman year getting everybody on the same page, and then the sophomore year we could start to educate new stuff. Are there too many school districts in Illinois, or do your organizations not worry about those kinds of things?
Well, I don't think there's a way to quantify if there are too many or too few. I think it's a local decision, and I think in those cases where communities feel like they're not able to, for whatever reason, provide a quality education for their children at a price that they can handle, they look for solutions, and maybe there are solutions related to reorganization that fit. I don't know if it always has to be consolidation. There are examples around the state where there have been mergers just related to detachments and annexations. There are other models that school districts are looking at where they might be able to have their autonomy still and keep a K-8 locally and then tuition their students at the high school level too. But those, I think, decisions are best made locally because those folks know best how their communities work and what is best. And you know, this isn't a new topic. There have been several attempts over the years to approach some type of reduction in the number of school districts, and I think it's something that, to me, you know, the inefficiency argument doesn't hold water. I can show you school districts that are tremendously efficient that have you know, less than a couple hundred students, and I can, you know, probably look at inefficiencies in districts that have 10,000 students. So there's really not a correlation there. I think it's what's best in that community, and you know, it's tough to slay a school mascot. So if you want a real problem, you guys were talking about
you know,
the Salukis earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
you would never want to see the Salukis go away, right?
So you know, some other aspects of this is that over time there's a steady decrease of the number of school districts, a steady decrease over the last 20 years. You can mark it. Next year there'll be fewer districts than there are this year. You also have to look at transportation. As districts would consider consolidation, they definitely, the moms and dads, the school board members, the administrators, the teachers, they're going to look at the time that a child is put on a bus to school and from school, and that becomes a substantial issue. The third issue is that there's this misunderstanding of consolidation and assuming that you're saving money, when in fact, I think I would be able to show you in almost every example how you end up with a higher cost structure for the resulting district than when you started. And more importantly than all of that is the simple question of this. When you're considering whether to do, the simple question is, what is the best opportunity and deal here for the kids? And if that opportunity and best deal is to stay as it is, stay as it is. If it's to consolidate, then those local people ought to know that and do that. That's the bottom line.
And with regard to that money, state law, correct me if I'm wrong, but the lower paid district, those teachers have to go in at the same pay as the higher paid district, although there's some state support for the first year.
Yeah, I've served as a member of 3 consolidation commissions. And it's interesting, once people understand how K-8s are funded differently than 9-12s and how those salary schedules at the 9-12 in a dual district situation, you say there are 8 feeder schools, they all have a salary schedule, right? The 9-12 has a salary schedule. And if you're going to go to a K-12 and they're all going to go together, there's a practice of the highest salary becoming the salary for all of the teachers in that new K-12 unit. It's very difficult. The other thing is funding. The formula itself would punish elementary districts if they were to go into. And so once you get to these details, even those folks serving on the commission are ready to say, you know what, this is best left locally, and there hasn't been really anything move forward out of any of those commissions because they've come to the same conclusion time after time.
Yeah, the most recent commission we were on was just within the last 4 years at least, maybe 3 years. I think it was called Students First Commission, and we went through the gyrations of all of this as we've done multiple times, and you end up concluding that it would cost the state, just for the incentives that are currently in the statute, somewhere between $2.8 and $3 billion just to fund the incentives that are required by statute. Then to your point about the effect of moving all certified employees to the highest salary and wherever the highest benefits are, that's what I was getting at when I was saying I could show you effectively have a higher cost structure with the resulting district because you're moving a lot of people to higher salaries and higher benefits, and at the end of that, when the state subsidy goes away, you have a higher cost structure overall to support. So it's not necessarily, and in fact I haven't seen it very often ever be a cost savings when you put the districts together all in a forced way. So I think there's a lot more to that than maybe meets the eye.
Let's talk about testing for a little bit. PARC, I'll have to look at my notes to remember what the acronym is. Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers.
I'm glad you had your notes because I forget that name too all the time. So,
can you define PARC for us? I mean, obviously it's to give teachers a measuring tool,
right,
so that they can say, okay, here's where we need to improve.
PARC is by design is to assess how students are scoring compared to the Illinois Learning Standards. And we have good Illinois Learning Standards, but assessment has become quite the political football, if you will, in Illinois. PARC has been administered at both the elementary levels and the high school levels. There was an enormous amount of pushback over the last year about giving PARC at the high school level because the push was, look, while it measures against Illinois Learning Standards, the high school students are really looking at wanting to take an assessment that gets them an admittance, if you will, or an acceptance into a recognized college or university or even a trade school. And PARC has, at least up to this point, not been, if I don't know of an example where they have been accepted, but we know that ACT and SAT have. So you saw the state board just within the last couple months make the move. I think it was in July. They made the announcement that next school year, the school year we just started, they will be administering the SAT at the high school level in lieu of the PARC, and that gives students a test that they are comfortable knowing that an institution of higher education is going to accept as an admittance score, whereas they would not accept the PARC score. So that's kind of the pull and the push of PARC in Illinois.
ACT fits into this in what capacity? I mean, SAT, ACT?
Well, they both obviously are college entry measures, and your score on that would determine whether or not you would qualify to enter certain universities. The state had to make a decision, and I think the SAT aligns so well with the learner objectives and also serves as that college entry test that it kind of passed two tests, if you will, for the State Board of Education. And there seems to be, the school folks I've talked to, especially administrators, a lot of interest in some of the educational resources that come with SAT at the 9th and 10th grade level and the potential for maybe measuring student success and growth. So I think we're in a good place right now with that choice that the state made.
You mentioned SAT and college. And the second C, PARC is P-A-R-C-C. The second C is and careers.
Career, you bet.
So not necessarily college.
Right.
So are we missing the boat here when we say SAT, it gives you a measuring stick by which, okay, I can go to college A or university A, and then we've forgotten about careers?
No, I don't think so. I think SAT, and again, the ACT-SAT conundrum, SAT does measure those career readiness factors. in a manner that is satisfactory. We used to give the Work Keys test, which was an ACT test that really kind of was aligned with the world of work. And in a perfect world with all kinds of funding, we could continue to provide all of those assessments, but there had to be tough decisions made based on resources. And I think the SAT of those possibilities was the best choice. But the career ready comment you made, I think, is tremendously important. I don't want to leave it right away because I think there's been a refocus on the importance of when we prepare students to leave high school, that it's really okay that we prepare them for a career. And the success of a school district doesn't always have to be measured by the number of students who are prepared for college. If we prepare students to go on to a career, we should value that. And I think there's a resurgence of the value of vocational and technical education in the last couple of years that's important.
No question. If you look at our economy overall, we've got to make sure as a country, not just as a state of Illinois, but as a country, that we're preparing people that can build and repair things. I think we're making a move away from that. At least we have over the last dozen years. There was a federal law that came into being around 2002 called No Child Left Behind. Acronym was NCLB. Sounded great. But what it did is it basically, through the pressure and the threat of federal sanctions, it caused schools to migrate away from vocational programs and focus entirely on really math and English. And you saw districts that got away from the vocational programs, but at the same time, we never lost the need for electricians. We never lost the need for a welder. We never lost the need for a plumber. All of those vocational trades still were there. And in fact, if we grow our economy, those needs will only grow with it. So to Mr. Eddy's point, valuing students that go into career is an area that we definitely need to refocus on and improve on in the next decade.
And we could go off on a tangent and talk about No Child Left Behind, but let's leave that behind.
Right.
And
it's truly behind, right?
Yeah.
And move on to one more thing on Park. I noticed in looking back at the test scores that the low test scores were, and this is meeting levels 4 and 5, the lowest percentages were always English learners, Native Americans, those that were economically disadvantaged. Always that was the case, regardless of state. It wasn't just Illinois. So I also then looked at where our teacher shortages have been prior to this year. I didn't have this year's numbers, but those teacher shortages were in special education, they were in English learners, English as a second language, etc. How do we go about saying we need to, look, here's the need?
If you wouldn't mind allowing us to intertwine and circle back, you just defined to some degree, if not a great degree, why we need an evidence-based funding model, because it addresses the difference in the enrollment, the difference in the demographics that each school district has, and could effectively put resources at that district level to try to address those concerns you just outlined. So that's just an example of how all of this is so interwoven.
And let's talk about evidence-based model just for a moment. And there are several evidence-based models depending on which industry you're in. But in this particular case, it calls for classes of less than 15 for K through 3. There is full-day kindergarten. There is tutoring. There is after-school programs. There's extended day programs. Boy, we're going back to the money, aren't we?
Well, but first, we're going back to identifying what we know works and what research shows us, as far as practices are concerned, result in quality education environments for children. And I think any funding model that can anchor itself to best practice and quality education for children is one we should pursue. All of those things that you talked about have research bases that show that in districts where there are these class sizes at the K elementary level, K through 3, the achievement is affected by those low class sizes, those smaller class sizes. And it's really important for students of poverty and EL students. Those things even multiply for children in those traditionally underachieving areas. So to me, it makes so much sense that if we're going to make major investments in education, which we should and we need to, that the investments are really kind of directed toward best practice, and we're supporting what we know works for a quality education.
I think when you list those, there's actually 27 elements of the model.
I didn't want to go through
Yeah, that's a long list. But each of them, and there's one more that I would just put out there for this discussion, instructional coaches, but each of those have an effect size. And basically what that is that's measuring, during the research project, that's measuring what's the return on the investment. And you'll hear us talk about this as an investment model, the evidence-based funding model as an investment model. So what's the return on the investment of those different elements? Roger's phrase, if we know this is what works, we think it's a smart play to do the things we know that work, to do the things that research says has a high return on investment. Instructional coaches, for example, has a 2.50 return on investment. And we have often used the example of a collegiate coach. Comparing that to a teacher being prepared to go into the classroom. Well, when we prepare a teacher, we run them through college, give them some licensure tests, put them in the classroom, go get them. We have a college coach. We recruit them. We compete with other school districts to recruit them with incentives and financial pay. And then that coach is highly interactive with those players all year. Imagine if we only had the preseason practices and we turned them out and said, go play. The coach doesn't exist. So the idea behind the instructional coach is to take your very best teachers, utilize them throughout your district, coaching every teacher in the district up to a higher standard of delivering education in the classroom. The tricks of the trade, if you will, and utilizing those best people, in the instructional coach, if you will, in your district to get the highest return on investment. We think that's a smart move. Research says it works, and we would like to pursue that in the evidence-based funding model.
Let me take, this is tangential in nature, but there's a lot of quality teachers who retire, and they might come back and serve their school in some capacity, but there seems to be, it's almost like, no, you're done, we don't want you anymore. I mean, why, what's the philosophy here that we're
Well, I'm not sure what the philosophy is. I do know that in an effort to really kind of, I think the effort was to make sure we have quality substitutes and that we raise the bar on who's in the classroom with our kids. There was an unintended consequence that took place because we began to require teachers who taught for 35 years to prove themselves again before they could come back and substitute teach, and also pay some fees that they didn't have to pay before. And I'm pretty sure it struck them in a negative way, and it should. So there's an effort now to try and reverse some of that, so we value them because they have a tremendous value. They really can bring a lot to the quality of a school district. And even in some of those cases where you need an instructional coach, maybe one of the best instructional coaches you could have is somebody that taught for 35 years and has retired and can come back in and help those young teachers understand, that it is a tremendous resource that we have in all of our communities that I think we need to tap into.
That's why I brought it up, because
Yep.
it's not just the benefit they bring to a classroom, it's the benefit they bring to that first-year teacher
Absolutely.
who sees, oh, I went to Illinois State University and they didn't tell me to prepare for this scenario. And
Right, and it would be impossible to prepare a brand new teacher for every conceivable scenario.
Can't.
But the instructional coach, just like in a football game, as that coach is sitting there, you prepare for 90 of the scenarios, but there might be 10 or 15 that develop during the game that you didn't plan for. And you've got to be there to adjust and help your players get through that, just like your teachers.
There's just a number of ways that they could provide and enhance the quality in a school. That's a good example. Another good example is, one of the things that we know is that sometimes students need additional help, right? And they need people to work with them after school or extended day or extended year. And, who better than those people that have really made a career of educating children to come and serve in those roles if they want to. So, yeah, it's really kind of unlimited, the value that they would bring.
let's stay on the topic of teachers and talk about merit pay. There's a lot of people who are in favor of that, and there's probably an equal number who are opposed to it. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but for instance, merit pay, the pros on this, it raises the bar of professionalism. Principals must have the authority to hire and fire. It's working in Denver, it's working in Dallas, last I could find. But there's cons to it. Merit pay doesn't have a positive effect on teachers' classroom work. David Tyack and Larry Cuban, they're educational historians. The districts that initially embraced merit pay have dropped it after a brief trial. What are your organization's takes on merit pay?
Well, from our standpoint, it's obviously something that could work if there is an agreement with the local Teachers Association and the Board of Education to establish some type of system that rewards teachers. But I think it has to be at that level. I don't think what might work in a rural school district in southern Illinois would be the same in a suburban school district, and that in those situations where they can come to an agreement, but I think you have to have that buy-in. I think because of the negatives that you just listed, it's important to collaborate and implement some type of system that is agreed to. Otherwise, I think it's doomed from the start, because it's going to create that climate and that environment that may affect really all your teachers. You don't want that. So I think it has to be collaborative.
One of the issues will be the evaluating of which person qualifies for the merit pay, which person doesn't. You'll see that would need to be clearly outlined. But I would go to just my experiences, even my own family members, many of which are teachers. I see them pour their heart and soul every day into teaching, and they're exhausted on a Friday night. I have a difficult time believing they would teach harder or faster or better if there was some quantifiable, let's call it a $1,200 stipend or something they could qualify for. Of course, they would desire that, probably, but I don't think it would cause them to try to work hard. I think they're giving it everything they have. So I think there's a lot of the mechanics around that would really need to be clearly articulated before it was implemented.
But there's the question, some people would suggest that, well, corporations operate on that basis. You do well. We're not talking about line workers here. We're talking about management people. You got to pay a raise of 3%, and you got to pay a raise of 1%.
I think it's a lot easier to quantify production on an assembly line with widgets and provide someone with an incentive than it is with children. Children are different. They come in all shapes, sizes, and they bring with them different types of challenges.
Yeah.
And I think it would be very difficult to compare the output when we're talking about children as compared to some other types of industries that maybe can measure those things more easily. Now, when you talk about teacher shortage areas, and one of the comments that I've heard is maybe that's where the different types of pay scales would come. And if you have trouble attracting someone because they have a physics background and they're a physics teacher, and maybe the local industry can pay them more, that there should be some type of incentive pay for certain shortage areas. I've heard that as well. And again, that brings with it a whole set of concerns as to whether or not you're measuring the right thing by providing someone the pay. You do it based on evaluation, then you have halo effect evaluations, and it's just a messier, it really is a messier environment in this type of industry than it is
Go briefly.
Let's compare education versus manufacturing industry. Let's say the industry here is making blueberry muffins, and this is educating kids. We take every child that walks up to the school door, no matter the condition, the disability, the size, the shape, the prominence or the lack of prominence that they come in. We take them all. Over here making blueberry muffins, someone is in charge of quality control on the blueberries. So when the blueberries arrive, somebody inspects the blueberries before they go in the muffins. And if the blueberries aren't up to a certain scale, the blueberries are rejected. They wait for the next batch of blueberries. There's a different arrangement on blueberry muffin making than students. And you could put that application into anything from building automobiles to, as is commonly said, widgets, whatever widgets are. But that's the approach on manufacturing and industry,
It's up
right?
to control the
Yeah,
variables
yeah.
at a school district. But and that should be. It's public education. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take every single child that comes through the doors, no matter what their condition and their background, and we're supposed to provide them with a quality education and hope for the future. And how do you measure that whenever you're talking about a pay scale? It is easier in other areas. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't ways that it can work, but I think it has to be locally determined as to what those variables are that you would like to incentivize. And everyone should have the opportunity to achieve that additional variable. Whoever that you're paying, everyone should have the opportunity. And maybe those things have to do with practice. Maybe those things have to do with your performance as it relates to not how the students achieve, but what you do. That maybe there's a set of those indicators that can be worked out, but locally, I think is the best way to do that.
And I'd be interested to see what they're doing in Dallas and Denver. I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with other research. It's not been so favorable, but I'd be open to seeing new research.
I'll see if I can dig it up for you.
I'd like to read it.
And with that, we have run out of time, a full hour
Wow.
on education, and so much more we could have talked about. So let me say thank you to Dr. Brent Clark, who's the Executive Director of the Illinois Association of School Administrators. Thank you so much for being with
Thank you.
Always good to be with a fellow Saluki.
You bet.
And Roger Eddy, the Executive Director of the Illinois Association of School Boards. Thank you both for joining us on At Issue. Next week on At Issue, we'll be back at our regular time, and we'll be talking about water quality. Galesburg, of course, has faced the problem with lead in residential homes. We'll talk about that with the mayor, and we'll talk about with the city manager of Normal, their efforts with regard to water safety and quality. Next time on At Issue.